We're very excited to have Miss Irene Oshaka joining us today as our subject matter expert. Ms. Oshaka serves as the e-learning development manager for the National Child Trauma Stress Network Academy at UCLA Duke University, the National Center for Child Traumatic Stress. In recent years, Ms. Oshaka has collaborated closely with the Department of Defense and the National Center on Sexual Behavior of Youth to develop trainings and resources on problematic behavior in children and youth for our military personnel and their families. She is very well versed on our topic today and specifically how it relates to our military families. So let me turn it over to Ms. Oshaka. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all having a great day so far. I'm so excited to be here and present on understanding and addressing problematic sexual behavior in children and youth. Let me go ahead and pull up the slides so that we can get started. Okay. Just to confirm, the slides are on the screen. Okay. Before I begin, I wanted to ask the audience, what have you heard of PSB-CY in the military? Feel free to put it in the chat box. I'll give it a minute or so that we can have a little conversation about it. And if you've never heard of PSB-CY, I hope that today and tomorrow's webinar will give you a good introduction on this topic. Okay, sounds like Heidi has never heard of PSB-CY. Welcome. And Michelle, you're just learning about it now. Thank you so much. This is a topic that may be uncomfortable for some parents or counselors or even any professionals to talk about, learn about, talk to families and children. So welcome, and I hope today and tomorrow's webinar will give you some ways to talk about this topic as well as educate yourself on the benefits of talking to families about this earlier on. Again, my name is Irene Oshaka. I work at the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, DoD Academy on Child Traumatic Stress at the UCLA Duke National Center for Child Traumatic Stress. The National Child Traumatic Stress Network, NCTSN, was established by Congress in 2000 to raise the standard of care and improve access to services for traumatized children, their families, and communities. The NCTSN serves as a resource for developing and disseminating evidence-based interventions, trauma-informed services, and public and professional education. Under the picture are two links. One is the main homepage of the NCTSN, www.nctsn.org, and the other link underneath that goes to resources developed by the NCTSN for military families and providers that support military and veteran families. The NCTSN Military and Veteran Families and Children program was formed in response to an increasing awareness that children from military and veteran families can be significantly impacted by their parents' mental health and physical injuries, deployment, and transition out of the military and civilian life. The NCTSN Military and Veteran Families and Children program disseminates educational and training resources for providers working with military-connected families, creates fact sheets and webinars for different audiences, including parents and caregivers, develops workforce training via the NCTSN DoD Academy on Child Traumatic Stress, and lastly, stays current with military, veteran affairs, and military-connected and veteran families. So why are we talking about problematic sexual behavior in children and youth today? RAND is a research organization that develops solutions to public policy challenges to help make communities throughout the world safer and more secure and healthier and more prosperous. To help inform its ongoing commitment to military-connected children and youth, the Office of the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Military, Community, and Family Policy asked RAND to conduct an assessment of the needs of military-connected children in the context of military child development centers, military youth programs, and schools with a significant military-connected child population. Noted in the most recent RAND report, one school liaison said, "The past few years, there have been a lot of behavioral issues, problematic sexual behavior, not age-appropriate behaviors, young children inappropriately touching one another, social interaction issues, especially after returning to school post-COVID." Starting as early as 2007, the NCTSN began developing training content and resources to inform parents and professionals about child sexual abuse. And starting in 2019, the NCTSN DoD Academy on Child Traumatic Stress began to develop training materials to educate and train the family advocacy program providers on best practices related to identifying and addressing problematic sexual behavior in children and youth, and the needs of both exhibiting and impacted children because of these behaviors. Our learning objectives for today's webinar, Understanding and Addressing Problematic Sexual Behavior in Children and Youth, PSB-CY, Part 1, are as follows. 1. Dispel common misconceptions related to problematic sexual behavior in children and youth. 2. Gain knowledge on problematic sexual behavior in children and youth. 3. Learn about vulnerability and protective factors related to problematic sexual behavior in children and youth. And lastly, 4, identify strategies to promote healthy sexual development and prevent problematic sexual behavior in children and youth. Defined by the Department of Defense, problematic sexual behavior in children and youth, or PSB-CY, refers to behaviors initiated by children and youth under the age of 18 that involve sexual body parts, that's the genitals, anus, buttocks, or breasts, in a manner that deviates from normative or typical sexual behavior, and that are developmentally inappropriate or potentially harmful to the individuals initiating the behavior, the individuals impacted by the behavior, or others. In simpler terms, PSB-CY is 1, a behavior that is developmentally inappropriate, and or 2, potentially harmful to the individuals impacted. Some key terms I want to highlight before moving on with today's webinar content. Child or youth exhibiting PSB. This is a child or teen under the age of 18 who initiates and engages in problem behaviors, again, involving sexual body parts in a manner that deviates from normative or typical sexual behavior and are developmentally inappropriate or potentially harmful. Child or youth impacted by PSB. This is a child or teen under the age of 18 who has been harmed or potentially harmed by problematic sexual behavior of another child or teen under the age of 18. Multidisciplinary team, or MDT, is a comprehensive, collaborative, and multidisciplinary child and youth-focused response, which includes well-coordinated prevention, education, and advocacy intervention services. Collaborators often include command, child and youth serving organizations, DoD education activity or DODEA schools, family-centered programs, medical services, law enforcement, and the servicing legal office. Safety and supervision planning. Safety and supervision planning for PSB-CY is the process of developing an individualized and practical plan that will help ensure safety, promote well-being, and reduce the possibility of future problematic sexual behaviors in children and teens. So what are some common misconceptions of PSB-CY? What should parents know about problematic sexual behaviors? These behaviors are more prevalent than most people realize. National rates of child sexual abuse estimate that anywhere from a quarter to a third of reports of child sexual abuse are actually involved of the initiation of the behaviors by another child or adolescent. No one really thinks about this as a possibility for happening within their family, problematic sexual behaviors. And so that's where the wave of emotions or denial happens for the parents. Lots of questions may come up, such as, what does this mean for my kid and their future? Are my kids safe? Are my other kids safe? Where did this come from, like the behaviors? Did something happen to my kid to make them act out in this way? And lastly, what do I do now, now that I found out about problematic sexual behaviors? I'll go over 4 common misconceptions about children with sexual behavior problems today. Other common misconceptions about children with sexual behavior problems can be found in the resource that was just posted within the chat. Children's sexual behavior problems, common misconceptions versus current findings. 1, the first misconception, children exhibiting PSB have been sexually abused. Actually, many children exhibiting PSB have not been sexually abused. While it's possible, it's not always the case. More often, contributing factors can include family sexuality patterns, exposure to sexually explicit material, curiosity, impulsivity, and inaccurate beliefs around consent and body boundaries communicated by peer groups. Next, children who have been sexually abused will later act out and sexually abuse other children sexually as well. Research suggests that most children who have been sexually abused do not have sexual behavior problems or act out on other children. Third, children exhibiting PSB should not attend public schools. Most children exhibiting PSB can safely attend public schools and participate in school activities without jeopardizing the safety of other children's or other students when appropriate safety measures are in place. And lastly, for children exhibiting PSB should not live in a home or with other children. With appropriate treatment and careful supervision, most children exhibiting PSB can live safely with other children. Clinical experience indicates that many children exhibiting PSB can remain in the home or their foster home with other children. Safety measures and supervision plans are developed and implemented to ensure safety and well-being of all family members. So talking about PSB-CY, sexual curiosity and exploration are a natural and vital aspect of healthy development, beginning in infancy and extending through adolescence and into adulthood. Exploratory sexual behavior in children and youth facilitates the understanding of one's own body and societal norms that dictate age-appropriate and acceptable sexual conduct. Parents, extended family members, community members, spiritual beliefs play a critical role in providing sexual behavior-related guidance and direction to children and youth. Sexual behaviors occur on a continuum. Within DoD, the Department of Defense, these behaviors are categorized as normative, cautionary, and problematic through the use of a tool called the PSB-CY non-clinical referral tool. For those who are unfamiliar with this non-clinical referral tool, this PSB-CY non-clinical referral tool, or NCRT, was developed to assist DoD Education Activity, DODEA, and Child Development or the Youth Program, CDP-YP, personnel in determining if a consult or referral to Family Advocacy Program, FAP, is necessary and is designed to help FAP in determining if a referred incident of problematic sexual behavior warrants engagement of the multidisciplinary team. I'll go ahead and talk more about the non-clinical referral tool multidisciplinary team in tomorrow's webinar, but since today is just the introduction to PSB-CY, I'll talk more about the continuum, guidelines, what to watch out for, and what parents can do as a first-line defense. The guidelines on the screen are not inclusive of all possible behaviors in these three categories. Other behaviors can be considered based on the circumstances of incidents and mitigating factors of the children or youth in the families. Normal sexual behaviors and development are defined as those aligned with child's developmental stage and that do not cause harm or distress to themselves or others. A normative sexual behavior is voluntary, infrequent, and spontaneous. It's when a child or youth is easily diverted, when adults tell children to stop, and when they explain privacy rules. The interaction involves sexual body parts between children of the same general age and physical size, occurs among children who know each other, and not accompanied by strong, uncomfortable, or upset feelings. An example of normative sexual behavior is children participating in pretend play involving touch, so this could include playing doctor or caring for a baby. Cautionary sexual behaviors are unsuitable for children or youth's age or situation. A cautionary sexual behavior is not suitable for the location, so it could be at school or faith community. It could be normative behavior, but is happening more frequently than typical for that child's age. Not currently harmful or distressing to self or others. Occurs despite adult intervention and is typical sexual behavior, but technology is involved, such as taking pictures of private parts. For school-aged children, so this is between ages like 6 to 12, examples of cautionary sexual behaviors include drawing sexual images and greater than typical interest in or attempts to see other children's private parts. Lastly, problematic sexual behaviors are out of bounds in terms of harm or emotional effects upon others. A problematic sexual behavior causes harm or distress to any child. It involves strong, upset feelings, such as anger or anxiety. It occurs among children of different ages or functioning. Continues to occur despite intervention by caregivers or other guiding adults. And lastly, preoccupied with sexual content and topics. For school-age children, examples of problematic sexual behaviors include touching others' private parts and repeated patterns of obscenities, peeping, or exposure. On the screen is another way to assess whether or not sexual behavior is problematic. The guidelines are broken down into three categories: behavioral considerations, developmental considerations, and harm. Under behavioral considerations, please note that PSB happens often in high frequency. PSB excludes normal childhood activities, and PSB is unresponsive or does not decrease with typical redirection or parenting strategies. Under developmental considerations, PSB often occur among youth of significantly different ages or developmental abilities. So this is, for example, a 10-year-old acting on a 4-year-old, or a 15-year-old acting on a 7-year-old. The behavior is longer in duration than developmentally expected and interferes with social development. And lastly, the harm component. PSB are intrusive behaviors. There is a use of force, intimidation, and/or coercion. And lastly, the behavior elicits fear or anxiety in other children. What are some signs that indicate that the child is engaging in risky or problematic illegal sexual behavior? The child or youth has sexual behaviors that include repeatedly wanting to play alone with a child, involve taking a child to private or secret place without supervision, takes place between children of wildly different ages or developmental stages, like I mentioned before, such as a 12-year-old acting out with a 4-year-old, 15-year-old with a 10-year-old. Occur between children of different capacities, such as disparate physical size and strength or intellectual abilities. Include sexualized behavior that is not developmentally appropriate. Focus a lot of time and energy on sexualized behavior, such as being intent on trying to watch a sibling undress. Continues to happen after being addressed appropriately by parental strategies or discipline. Interferes with friendships. This could include a youth not being asked back to a friend's house due to an action that they did. And lastly, show mature knowledge of sex, such as a 4-year-old acting out sexual activity with toys. Children of military and veteran families experience unique challenges related to military life and culture. These include deployment-related stresses such as parental separation, family unification and reintegration, disruption of relationships with friends and neighbors due to frequent moves, and adaptation to new schools and new community resources. Added to this, some children face the trauma of a parent returning home from combat with injuries or illness. Others must face their parent's death. Vulnerabilities or risk factors can be internal, like pre-existing conditions or stemming from past trauma, or external, like lacking social support. Military families face unique risk factors compared to their civilian counterparts, particularly during deployments, which can negatively impact their mental health and well-being of both service members and their families. Some risk factors I've noted on the screen include permanent change of stations leading to frequent moves, potential disruptions due to moves or parental separation, potential lack of supervision, stigma associated with sharing outside the family, and stress or conflict within the family. Specifically for PSB-CY, vulnerability factors or characteristics, situations, activities, or behaviors can increase the risk of PSB. This can be assessed across multiple domains. I know that the screen is a little bit small, text is a little bit small, but if you're able to go into your chat, I believe Ms. Kim Armstrong did post the most recent resource, PSB-CY Vulnerability and Protective Factors. This is a 2-page infographic that will have all this information listed as well. Again, risk factors or vulnerability factors for PSB can be assessed across multiple domains. So this includes child or teen, family, parents, caregivers, siblings, peer and social factors, and media interactions. Vulnerability factors that increase the risk of PSB can include the child or youth showing lack of respect for others' boundaries and wishes, has history of family violence, the parents are overwhelmed and stretched thin to manage all responsibilities, or they have history of harsh parenting practice or child maltreatment. Siblings have history of conflict or negative relationship. The child or youth having peers who are negative or break rules at school and in the community. The school and the community lacking response to academic and social needs of the youth. And another vulnerability factor includes the child or youth having unsupervised or unmonitored access to and use of social media. Let's not forget that military children and families are also adaptable and have access to many resources. These protective factors act as buffers against adversity and enhance resilience. In the case of PSB, protective factors reflect characteristics, situations, activities, and competencies or strengths that may decrease the risk of PSB. Again, across multiple domains, some protective factors that decrease the risk of PSB includes the child or youth expressing emotions in a healthy manner, Within the family system, the child or youth engaging in open and healthy communication among family members and has regular, enjoyable family interactions. The parents engage in open communication about well-being, sexual development, beliefs, values, and advocates for their child and family's well-being. Siblings express and receive support from each other. Peers demonstrate respect of others' boundaries and has friends that help them achieve academic and personal goals. The school or community promoting and supporting the child or youth's participation in pro-social activities. So this includes sports, clubs, volunteer activities. And lastly, the child or youth alerts a parent or trusted adult when receiving messages, images, or content that trigger thoughts or actions linked to PSB. So what can you do as a parent or caregiver to prevent problematic sexual behavior? Although talking with children about bodily changes and sexual matters may feel awkward, providing children with accurate, age-appropriate information is one of the most important things parents can do to make sure children grow up safe, healthy, and secure in their bodies. As a parent, you can promote healthy sexual development and prevent sexual behavior challenges by empowering children with knowledge about their bodies, their rights, and safe behaviors. First and foremost, the most important thing, educate. You can do this as young as infants by teaching them anatomically correct body parts during bath time or body changes. This normalizes the language for both you and the child. You can simply name the body parts as you wash it. To your son, you can say, that's your penis. I'm going to wash your penis now. Or to your daughter, you can say, that's your vagina. That's your vulva. I'm going to go ahead and wash it now. Also teach about body autonomy, meaning your body is special and it is yours. As children grow older, provide accurate information about puberty and reproduction and answer questions about sex and sexual health. Be responsive. Maintain open communication with your children. Don't dismiss your child when they ask questions. If it's not an appropriate time to talk about the subject at that time it's brought up or that location, return back to it at another time during the day or later that night. If they're willing to talk about it, also be willing and open to have that communication with your child. Active supervision. This could include line of sight supervision, and what line of sight supervision means is a person or a child is continuously within the view of a supervisor, ensuring that they remain visible and can be easily observed. This doesn't necessarily require direct eye contact, but it means the individual should be within the supervisor's field of vision. This is more pertinent or relevant for children that are younger. Next, set clear boundaries and rules. Set clear boundaries and rules on personal space, privacy, dating, and signs of affection. And of course, nowadays, the use of technology. Monitor electronic device use and protect children from sexually explicit media, such as enabling parental controls on devices. However, don't assume that just by activating these controls that you'll be taking care of the situation or the problem. It's also very important that you're aware of what your child is watching on TV or their devices and what's online, and make time to also watch the content with them so that you know what's going on within the show or on their devices. And lastly, reinforce. Reinforce the boundaries, the rules, and appropriate behaviors. Reinforce ways to treat themselves and others with respect and dignity. Before I end today's presentation and move to the Q&A section, I hope that you understand that one, it is crucial to approach children's sexual development with sensitivity, understanding that behaviors occur across a continuum from normative to problematic. Education for parents, caregivers, and professionals is essential to appropriately classify and respond to behaviors based on developmental and cultural context. Early identification of deviations from normative behaviors can aid in providing timely support and intervention. And then on the next slide, I have lots of resources listed for you all to look at your convenience. The first two bullets provided are hotlines to report sexual exploitation and remove explicit photos online. I mentioned also NCTSN webpage and military and veteran families page. There's also a vetted sexual abuse page with additional resources that may be of interest to you, linked on the third bullet. The National Center on the Sexual Behavior of Youth, NCSB-CY, is a great resource as well. They strive to inspire youth, parents, caregivers, and professionals to make better choices to instill happier and healthier responses to PSB. They are an evidence-based resource and information center. They have curated pages for professionals supporting military families and pages specifically for parents, caregivers, another page for children, adolescents, and lastly, impacted youth or child. Military One Source is another great resource I want to bring your attention to. They strive to build a foundation for a continuum of support across military and civilian communities. I've highlighted 2 web pages and 2 podcasts related to healthy sexual development and problematic sexual behavior in children and youth. On the top right, one-up webinar titled From Hysteria to Hope, Bringing Reason to Sexual Abuse in Childhood. This webinar describes the importance of understanding the developmental differences between older and younger children. Lastly, I've listed some books for parents on this topic. AJ's Story About Not Okay Touches. It's Not the Stork, a book about girls, boys, babies, bodies, families, and friends. And last book, I Said No, a kid-to-kid guide to keeping private parts private. I wanted to talk a little bit more about AJ's Story About Not Okay Touches. This book is designed to be read by a supportive adult, such as a parent, caregiver, counselor, to a child that's age 5 or 10 or anyone that's developmentally appropriate who has engaged in not okay touch or problematic sexual behaviors with another child. This children's book contains conversation boxes throughout its pages that assist children in expressing their thoughts and feelings about what is okay and what is going on in their story. And lastly, fact sheets and infographics listed on the screen were also sent in today's chat box and will be available as part of webinar materials. That's a lot of information, and I know that some of you noted that you've never heard of PSB-CY, so I did want to make sure we had plenty of time to answer any questions that you have about PSB-CY, or if you have anything that you have in mind as you heard the webinar today.
Can tell you that sadly, over the 30 years of military life that my family has led, there were scenarios that I had noted through many of the things you talked about. So I did not have this resource. I was not aware of the title Problematic Sexual Behavior in Children and Youth. And thankfully didn't experience anything directly, but definitely have heard of and seen some things in those 30 years in the military. So let me ask you that, I know talking about tomorrow's webinar, we're going to talk a little bit more about safety and supervision measures and support services for families, but what are some important considerations for parents related to problematic sexual behavior in children and youth?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess one of the first things is like I mentioned in today's webinar, it's more prevalent than you realize. It's definitely a topic that is really hard to talk about depending on the culture, depending on like where you are. Even to myself, I'm a young mom. Just a little bit personal story. Before we popped into the to today's webinar, Michelle and Kim saw my little one.
Adorable.
He's just one, and it's hard from my culture to when I'm bathing them to talk and name the names of the body parts and to really like set the child up for success in terms of like knowing their own body, knowing that if you don't want to hug, you don't have to hug. If you don't want to high five, you don't have to high five, especially to with other kids or with adults that you're not familiar with. I did want to note that with PSB-CY, and if you do encounter that your child engaged in PSB-CY, it's okay to have strong emotions. If you found this out, parents feel a range of emotions when they hear that their kid either acted out in a certain way. It could be like confusion, anger, worry. Why are they acting in this way? I think the biggest focus is, you know, safety of that child, having a safety plan in place to ensure that your child and the other child impacted is safe, and considering ways to supervise um, what they can do, especially online and in social settings, to make sure that they don't engage in it again, as well as making sure that they feel that they are being supported by their child, by their parent or caregiver. Um, it's also important to not blame yourself as a parent. Like PSB-CY itself is a very complex issue. It's important to know that parents don't have all the answers, and that's where I wanted to use part 2 tomorrow to talk about the supports set in place within the military, to have a language about sexual behaviors, about problematic sexual behaviors, um, and what the community has set up as well in a multidisciplinary team approach to support the family members um, who are in the process of going through problematic sexual behavior.
Okay, that's a good answer. And we have a really good question from Michelle, one of our attendees, and she asked, is there anything different or maybe resources for families of children with disabilities, both physical and intellectual? Seems like they're at a higher risk from what you talked about today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there definitely is resources out there for families of children with disabilities, both physical and intellectual. I didn't add them within today's webinar today, but I can definitely send them along to Michelle and Kim
Mhm.
and share along with that. Um, Let me think on the top of my head. I believe there are some, but um,
Okay, well, I can go ahead. You can
yeah.
get that to me afterwards, and I will definitely forward that on to Michelle. If anybody else would like that information, just let me know and I can get that to you as well after today's webinar. Okay, I have another question for you. As a parent, what should a parent do if they're suspecting problematic sexual behavior in their child?
Yeah. Some common reactions that parent might feel again are like guilt, shame, disappointment in the child's decisions, and difficulty even believing the actions have happened. Although it's not easy for that concerned parent, it's important to remain calm and supportive as possible. Um, a parent shouldn't grill the child for every detail, like asking numerous questions. Why did you do that? You know it's wrong. You shouldn't do that. But it's more important to reassure the child that he or she is not to blame and to ask gentle, open-ended questions and prompts, such as, tell me more about that. Um, who did that? Where did this happen? Not so much in a blame accusatory sort of way.
Okay, so just a scenario, a friend of mine, when she just moved to a new location, told me that her little one was 3 and the next door little boy was 4. And they were playing in another room and she walked in and they were both there with their pants down at 3 and 4. Now, from what I'm hearing you, that's a relatively normal thing. They didn't make a big deal about it and they just, stopped it from happening. So that's a relatively benign situation.
Mhm.
Okay.
It sounds crazy as a parent who like runs into that, and like you think sometimes I think, my child is like 3 and 1, so really similar age, at least my oldest one.
Yeah.
He's gonna run in like play doctor or
Yeah.
whatever with other kids. And then I think that's gonna ruin him forever, like, But honestly, it's as soon as like a child is born, they are interested in their bodies. They want to know how to open and close their hands. They want to know how to open and close their mouth. They want to like stretch as far as they can. They're interested in their bodies. They're wondering, what is this and what is that? And why is it different? Like, why is yours different looking than mine is? So them playing doctor and them like showing each other like, hey, you have a longer arm than me. Hey, you have black hair, I have brown hair. It's normal. What's concerning and what goes to problematic is when they do it very often and if it's a different age group as well. So like the 3-year-old and a, 12-year-old. If there's
Yes.
harm, if let's say like the 12-year-old is saying, you must pull down your pants, I want to see it now. Um, of course, like running into that situation, then 3 and 4-year-old, don't make it like they are in trouble. Like I don't
Yeah,
want
I
to say
asked
like a
her how did she
happy.
handle that, and she said, we just didn't
Mhm,
make a big deal. We just, you know, changed the situation and got him into playing with some toys or something. So
That's a
yeah.
perfect response.
I think with the military, and you're moving every couple of years, sometimes is it a higher risk for our military children with that moving, every 2 to 3 years on average?
mm, I'm not sure about that specifically. I think that maybe they are more susceptible of like wanting, well, I don't know the exact answer to that. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay. I just know as a parent, every time we moved, it was always a concern. Our kids would want to go sleep. I'd have a sleepover, and I hadn't met the parents yet, and they didn't understand that. And so that was always, I think, what you have shared with us today and tomorrow, probably more so. How do you deal with that child, and how to explain to them, I'm not ready for you to go stay at that house yet, even though that's your new best friend. So that, with us moving constantly, that's a situation that's reoccurring,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. Um, I knew a situation when we were in Germany and our children were on a swim team, and kind of a long story, but the one of the spouses, the female was deployed, the wife was deployed, and the husband was back with 2 little girls, and he became the photographer for the swim team, and everybody, he was a wonderful volunteer. But it turned out when she came home, found out that he had been maintaining inappropriate pictures of these little girls on the swim team, and they were not married anymore. But now our kids found out that was happening. Our kids were not involved directly, our kids were older, but that was a really hard thing to address. How would you address something like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, I think definitely be honest and open with your child. Like that shouldn't have happened, but it happened. Um, like an adult shouldn't be having pictures of that. If it ever happens to you, please come to me and I am here to help you through it. Um, and even though it didn't happen directly to um, the children that were mentioning to you, um, that's a good place to have conversation about it. Like, why is it not okay? And like,
Mhm.
is do you have
Use
any
it as an
feelings about
opportunity.
it? Because even though their pictures aren't on there, maybe they're scared now that it would be, and they're like more timid, like there might be some sort of, I don't want to quote unquote like traumatic response, but like they might have some sort of reaction to it that will now steer them away from certain like activities, behaviors, like things like that. Um, just because that swim coach did a certain thing doesn't mean that all swim coaches do that as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's good. That's a good answer. Well, so in that, are there conversation starters for parents of different age groups that you would have to recommend?
Yeah, that will definitely be covered tomorrow. If
Perfect.
y'all are if those who are on the line today would like to join tomorrow, um some things like well, some things to focus on when they're younger, it's hard to really have a conversation like we do as an adult or even with a teen. But most importantly, just to reinforce that their body is theirs. Um, Around like school age, they're starting to get a little bit more knowledge. I believe, have sex ed around like fifth or sixth grade, at least with my LAUSD, like California education I did. It's like more so, yes, your body is yours, but also know that it's changing, right? Your body is changing really rapidly around those teenage puberty years. And then lastly, during the teenage time, or adolescent to teenage time, body is yours, your body is changing, but it's also your actions now have a really big impact on how it is moving forward, like how you're dating, especially nowadays online, like what you put online up and stuff like that.
Well, I'm looking forward for tomorrow because I think that as a parent, sometimes you don't want to, it is a fine line to try to help them to, like you said, be prepared and scaring them, so I am interested and I'm looking forward to tomorrow on that. Do we have any other questions? And our audience, please put it in the chat box.
Oh, I see. Miss Michelle
Okay.
mentioned this may be covered more tomorrow. Is there a type of therapist a family should look for specifically if the child experiences PSB-CY or the child is
No.
exhibiting? Um, you should be referring to Family Advocacy Program, FAP. They have a host of folks who support PSB-CY, and they do have policy now on PSB-CY too, so they know the process, how like protocols and everything. Um, family Advocacy Program clinicians, they know what to look for based off of the initial assessment, as well as referring you to specific clinicians who are specialized. And we'll talk a little bit more about the interventions too tomorrow to treat PSB-CY. If not Family Advocacy Program, there's also other agencies that support. So like they would refer you out to some community if that child is a what would you call it? Uh is not part of the military. They
Civilian.
would go to, sorry.
Civilian.
So yeah. Uh yeah, they would go to civilian like agencies like the children advocacy centers. So they partner really closely with other agencies as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Michelle, for asking that question. Well, we want to thank Irene for Ms. Osaka for her time today. Wonderful information. Sadly, very important information for our parents, especially for our military parents. So I hope that you that were here today decide to come back tomorrow. Feel free to share that link if you think that someone else could benefit from this information. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there. It is a difficult subject for parents, but it's an important one. So I'm going to go ahead and finish us up here. Take the screen back. Can you see my screen, everybody? I think we're going to go ahead and thank you, our attendees. There we go. Thank you very much again for being here today, for taking part in this. We do ask you for your information. So we want to invite you to take our survey. We mentioned it in the beginning. You can do that by clicking on the survey link that will be in the chat box, but also the QR code on the screen. You can just, use your phone to bring that up. You're going to have to enter the 4-digit webinar code, which is 5725 for today's specific webinar, and be sure to hit submit at the end of the survey. It'll take you maybe 2 to 3 minutes, but we do appreciate that you take that survey to let us know how we're doing and how maybe we can make improvements. We also want to share with you some of our excellent resources that MSEC has to offer. We invite you to check out School Quest. This is an online interactive tool that is specifically designed to support our highly mobile military families and our students. So it can be used by parents, students, and actually it's a great resource for our counselors. So if you want to take a look, it is free. So take a look, use it, share it with others, again, that you think might benefit from it. And then we have our military student consultants. Should you have any questions, concerns, or educational related issues for your military connected children, these are our premier source that can provide you one-on-one help for all of your questions. Mark and Terry, they get back to you, and usually within 24 hours, if they don't have the question answered, they will get it for you. So we really encourage you to reach out and use them. They're a great resource. Now, MSEC also has created the Military Wellbeing Toolkit, which was developed for parents, school professionals, behavioral and mental health professionals, as well as community leaders. So this tool is full of resources for all aspects of our military-connected children's well-being. And again, we would love for you to explore it and to share it with others. And that link is in the chat box, and this QR code is on the screen. If you've missed one of our previous webinars, or maybe you want to share this one, all of our recordings can be found on our website, and eventually this will be on our YouTube channel, and those links are in the chat box. And we are very excited to announce that our MSEC now has our Spanish-speaking webinars. But you can join Mariela and Yasmina at the end of each month for these special webinar presentations that are funded by HEB. As for the rest of our webinars, these will also begin at noon Eastern Time, and you can find that information in your chat box. The next one that is coming up is May 29th, and I'm not going to pronounce the Spanish version, but in English, it is Empowering Military Connected Children, Building Self-Advocacy Skills. So it is a good one for our military kids. If you're interested in obtaining a certificate of completion for today's webinar, please complete that online survey that we talked about, and then reach out to reach@militarychild.org, and that one will be sent to you. Now, we also have some other webinars upcoming. As you all know, tomorrow in part 2, we'll talk about safety and supervision measures to promote the well-being of our military families and community, as well as how parents can become more involved. So there's the link to register for that. And also on this Thursday, we will have a webinar on navigating the highs and lows of being a military connected child. So there's a lot to cover on that one. Again, all webinars start at noon Eastern Time. And then we want to give a special thanks to the Navy Child and Youth Programs again for making today's webinar possible. And of course, Miss Irene Oshaka for her very informative presentation. We also appreciate you for all of your interest and participation today and your questions.